Okay, so let's start. Okay, so let's start. So I hope I'm audible to everyone and I'm able to share my screen as well. So I hope this is visible to all of you. So good evening, all of you. Today I'm going to talk about the week 4 course of medicinal chemistry, which is a NPTEL platform course, and the course instructor is Professor Harinath Chakrapani from ISER Pune. And I am Simran, your PMRF teaching assistant. I am a fifth year PhD student at IIT Bombay. So today we will be talking about. So I think someone wants to join. Okay. Okay. So today we will be going to talk about the week 4 course, and which is basically these are the main points which I highlight in every session because someone new is always joining. So here I will be repeating this. So here this Saturday, every Saturday we will be having this tutorial from 5 to 7 p.m. and the platform is Google Meet, and the channel on which I am uploading this particular video is Simran NPTLTA. That is a YouTube channel of mine on which I will be uploading the recordings, and from each week I will be recording the video and and uploading on that particular platform. So if anyone has any doubt regarding the YouTube channel, you can mail me or ask me here, and make sure you attend every tutorial to understand the course better, because in every tutorial we learn something very very important, and also every tutorial is important to attend in terms of understanding the course. And also this is a week 12 course, so 12 weeks are there. So every week we will be solving very important questions in tutorials. So please attend every tutorial. I think someone wants to join. Please be on time, that is actually very important. So please be on time, that is very much required for better understanding and also for my sake. So coming to week 4, so these are the points on which we will be having questions today. That is receptors as drug targets and their interaction, stereochemistry with the drug receptor, interaction conformation and cyclic acyclic structure. So this is the course for week 4, and this is the particular points on which we will be talking today in the tutorial, and the question will be based on these things only. So I hope you have already went through the video lecture of Professor Harinath Chakrapani on the NPTEL platform. And if every one of you has understood whatever he has teach, so I think you will be able to answer today's tutorial questions. So it is very important to first go on through that particular video lectures, and then you will attend this tutorial, and then only you will understand the course better. Please join on time. It's very painful to add everyone. Okay. Okay, so this is what the course is for week 4. So now coming to particular questions, and also first of all we will be discussing about the receptors. and I hope you all have went through the video lectures. But if not, or you haven't understood anything, so I will be discussing about these receptors and the type of receptors which are present, and the function, basically the function of receptor drug interaction, and also uh, the conformation and stereochemistry we will be discussing today. So firstly, the question is, what are receptors? So basically, these receptors are the membrane bound proteins that contain an external binding site for hormones or neurotransmitters. Basically, receptors have a binding site, external binding site for the hormones and neurotransmitter to get attached to it, and then it will function in the particular domain in which the receptors are organized to function. Okay, and this binding actually results in an induced fit that changes the receptor conformation. So previously in the previous lecture we have learned about the lock and key model and as well as the induced fit model. So if you recall, in the induced fit model there is a conformational change which happen in the receptor basically, and then only the enzyme substrate interaction happens, right? So if you take a substrate and then you have to have that enzyme attaching on that particular substrate. The first model was the lock and key model, but as they have seen that there is a conformational change which happens on the substrate side when the enzyme uh, attaches to it. So that is why the induced fit model comes into play. So here also, when the binding results, when the binding of hormone or transmitters happen with receptor, there is a induced fit change that happens in the receptor conformation. So the receptor conformation changes. So this triggers a series of events that ultimately results in a change in cellular chemistry. So if there is a change in the receptor conformations, and then there is a change in cellular chemistry that happens. So neurotransmitters and hormones do not undergo a reaction when they bind to receptors. See, we have talked about on this particular aspect that when the receptor binds with the neurotransmitters or hormones, they actually do not form bonds, right? So there is an interaction which is the non-covalent interaction that is responsible for the reaction between them. But if they form the covalent bond, then there is no action that could happen. So previously, you can take an example of that induced fit model. An enzyme and substrate binds with each other. So basically, we have learned in the previous lecture that when they bind, there is the non-covalent interaction which happens. But if they bind with a covalent interaction, then they will not separate with each other, and they will not then produce product and free enzyme, right? So that is why the interaction must be non-covalent rather than the covalent interaction. So covalent bonds are not operated in our body. Okay. So they depart the binding site unchanged once they have passed on their message. Right. So when the receptor is present in the cell membrane, neurotransmitter hormones when came to the receptor, they bind with each other, they undergo a reaction, and they pass on the message and they depart from each other, right? This is how they work. But if you form the covalent bond with each other, then the departing of that particular hormone with receptor doesn't happen. Okay, so there should be a catalytic process which has to maintain between the receptor and hormone. So they combine with each other, they pass on the message, and then they depart from each other. So similarly, multiple messages are transmitted through the cell membrane by the receptors. So this is how they work. Okay. So the interaction that bind a chemical messenger to the binding site must be strong enough to allow the chemical message to be received, but weak enough to allow the messenger to depart. So are you understanding this point? So here what they are saying that the interaction between a receptor or a hormone is to be strong enough to allow the chemical message to be received. Basically, the chemical message should be passed on. So this much they have to be in close proximity, right? But it is not that much strong binding interaction that they do not get apart from each other. So there is a optimal binding which has to happen to pass on the message, and after the message is received, they have to uh, basically depart from each other. Okay, so the binding groups are the functional groups present on a messenger molecule which are used for binding it to the receptor binding site. So this thing we have learned in, I think, week 1 or week 2 tutorial lecture, in which I have given you examples or questions of the different binding functional group which is responsible for the binding of receptor molecule and the messenger molecule. Okay, like free amine, hydrogen bonding, van der Waal interaction, polar interaction, ion interaction. We have talked about it, right, in the week 1 course. So, if you haven't attended that class, or if you are not present, just see the video lecture which is available on the YouTube channel, and then you will understand what I'm saying. Okay, now coming to the next point. So, here the binding regions are regions of the receptor binding site which contain functional group capable of forming intermolecular bonds to the binding groups of a messenger molecule. So, similarly, this is also saying the same thing, that there are some binding region which is present on receptor site and messenger site. So they have to come together, they have to interact with each other for that, for the messenger, for the message to be transferred. Okay, so these are the points which are important when we are talking about the receptors. Okay, so these are the receptors. So then we have to go to the type of receptor. So the type of receptors are intracellular receptor or cell surface receptor. So imagine a scenario in which you have a cell membrane, phospholipid bilayer, which we have talked about. So that cell membrane, the receptor which are present on the cell surface are three types: this ligand gated ion channel, G protein coupled receptor, enzyme receptor. Okay, and there are some receptors which are not present on the cell surface. Instead, they are present in the inside the cell, basically intracellular receptors. They are called as intracellular receptors. So these receptors are present inside the cell membrane. Okay, and these are the receptors, these three are the receptors which are present on cell surface. So this is how they are, different kind of receptor present in our body. So one by one we will be discussing about these four receptors. So first we come across the intracellular receptor. So basically these are the receptor, as I have talked, that this is the receptor which is present inside the cell membrane. So some signal molecules that are small or hydrophobic can pass through the plasma membrane and bind to the receptor located inside the cell. These intracellular receptors are cytoplasmic or nuclear proteins. So, uh, if you recall, in week 2, we have talked about that there are some small or hydrophobic groups that are able to pass the plasma membrane. And when they pass the plasma membrane, there are receptors present inside the cell membrane which are actually responsible for the cytoplasmic action. So, in which what happens, intracellular receptors are present on the cytoplasm or nuclear proteins. Okay, so and the cell surface receptors are the molecule which are the signal molecule that cannot pass through the plasma membrane and then bind to receptor located on the cell surface. So these two type of receptors, in which how they play the role. So in intracellular receptors, small molecule which are able to cross the cell membrane and came to the cytoplasm of the cell membrane. Intracellular receptors are important for them because these small molecule will bind with the receptor molecule, these intracellular receptor, to pass on the message. But some molecules that are hydrophilic in nature, polar molecules, as we have talked about, that the cell membrane's surface is hydro hydrophilic in nature, right? Polar head groups are present, and inside that hydrophilic hydrophobic chains are present, fatty acid chains are present, right? So outside the cell membrane, these are the polar head groups. So it is the hydrophilic nature of that particular cell membrane, and inside the cell membrane there is a lipophilic, um what we call it, lipophilic strong fatty acid chains are present. Okay, so the cell surface protein, basically the cell surface receptors are able to pass on the message of that particular signal molecule that are not passing through the plasma membrane. Okay, so you can see in this pictorial graph that receptor in the cytosol, these are the receptor which is present on the cytoplasm inside the cell. Lipophilic signal molecule diffuse through the cell membrane and bind to cytosolic or nuclear receptors. So this is the lipophilic molecule. So as I have told you that this is the lipophilic area. Basically this is the non-polar area. So lipophilic molecule will pass on the cell membrane and bind through these receptors. Whereas the lipophobic or lipophilic signal molecule, they bind to the receptor on the surface of cell membrane. So the polar signal molecules will bind to the cell surface receptor rather than going to the plasma membrane. Okay, so these are the two receptors, and now we will be going to the cell surface receptor, as it is of three types. As I have already told you that this is the ligand gated ion channel, G protein coupled receptor, and enzyme linked receptor. So we will be getting a small idea of what they are doing in this particular thing. So first of all, the intracellular receptor, how they are working. There are gene regulators and enzyme receptors. So what happens first? Gene regulators. So signal molecule joined to the receptor changes shape and a DNA binding site is exposed. So the DNA binding site joined to a specific segment of DNA and activates a particular gene. So this is the gene regulator. So intracellular receptors have inside the cytoplasm, there are how they are acting as a gene regulator. So some of the signal molecule, when they bind to the receptor, as I have discussed that there is a conformational change which happens when the molecule attached to the receptor, and after that a DNA binding site is exposed. So the DNA binding site then join to a specific segment of DNA and activates or suppresses a particular gene. So this is how they regulate the gene expression. In enzyme receptors, these receptor functions as enzymes, proteins that catalyze specific chemical reactions. So inside the body, intracellular receptors, there are enzyme receptors which particularly speed up or catalyze your chemical reaction which is happening in the body. And when a signal molecule joins to a receptor, the receptor's catalytic domain is activated. So these are the two uh, basically receptors in intracellular cells, which actually regulates your gene expression, and also they have the enzyme catalytic activity. So I think someone wants to join. Okay, wait. Okay, I'm so sorry, I haven't seen your message. Is it visible right now? Okay, so I was talking about the receptors, as I have already told you that they bind with that particular uh, neurotransmitter and hormones and undergo a shape change, and then the message will pass on. And there are these three type of receptors. So basically, in intracellular receptors, these are the receptor which is present inside the cell membrane, and this is there are cell surface receptor which is present on the cell surface. And in this we have three type of receptors, that is the ligand gated ion channel, G protein coupled receptors, and enzyme linked receptors. Okay, then I have talked about this receptors, that is intracellular receptor and cell surface. Similarly, some signal molecules that are small and hydrophobic that cannot pass through the plasma membrane and bind to the receptor located inside the cell. So basically, those molecules which can pass through the plasma membrane, they bind to the receptor that are known as intracellular receptors, and the molecules which cannot pass through the plasma membrane and bind to the receptor located on the cell surface are bind to the cell surface receptors. So as you can see here, these are the receptors which is present in the cytoplasm of the cell. So some lipophilic signal molecule that can diffuse through the cell membrane and bind to that particular receptors. And there are some molecules that are basically polar in nature. They bind to the receptor which is present on the cell membrane instead of going to the cell membrane, basically penetrating to the cell membrane. So when we talk about the intracellular receptors, there are two type of regulation they do. So there are gene regulators and enzyme receptors. So when the molecule binds to the receptor changes shape and a DNA binding site is exposed. So when this DNA binding site will join to the another segment, it activates or suppresses a particular gene which participate in the gene expression. So this is how they regulate the gene expression. And enzyme receptors, these receptors functions as enzyme proteins that can catalyze or specific reaction that is happening in your body. So basically they join to the receptor and then they activate the catalytic activity of that particular receptor. So these are the two intracellular receptor which is present in the cytoplasm of the cell. So you can take example of this. So there is a steroid hormone interacting with an intracellular receptor. So this is the hormone, that is testosterone. It is passing through the plasma membrane and it is interacting with this particular receptor protein. Okay, inside the cell. So this is the receptor molecule. This is the hormone that has to be added to that particular receptor. So what happens first? The steroid hormone, testosterone, passes through the plasma membrane. So first of all, it crosses the plasma membrane. Then the testosterone binds to a receptor protein in the cytoplasm and activating it. So it passes on and it binds to the receptor protein and then it activates particularly, which is, so this receptor previously it was unactivated. When the hormone is attaching to it, it is getting activated. So this yellow blinking line is shows the activation. So there is a hormone receptor complex which is now forming. The hormone receptor complex enters the nucleus and binds to specific gene. So now this molecule particularly enter the nucleus. This is the nucleus of the cell membrane, right? This is the cell nucleus. So when it forms, it will pass to the nucleus and then it binds to particular gene, that is a DNA gene, you can say. And after that, the bound protein stimulates the transcription of the gene into mRNA. So what happens when it binds with this particular gene? Now this bound protein stimulates the transcription. Transcription, as we have already learned in the previous lecture, that there is a replica which is forming. There is a replica which is forming of that particular DNA. So there is a transcription which happens, and then the mRNA is translated into specific protein. So now this mRNA will goes to new protein. So basically, this specific protein will bind through it, and there is a generation of new protein which happens. So these are the series of events which is happening when your steroid hormone is interacting with the intracellular receptor. Okay, so this is how your intracellular receptor works for the gene regulation. So is it clear to everyone? Any doubts in this particular thing? It is bit tricky. You have to be very attentive at this point. So is it clear? Any doubts in this particular slide? audible to you? Okay, okay. Please ask me whenever you are feeling like it is going fast or something like that. Please ask me. I'll explain it again. And also, I will just slow down. So, now coming to surface receptors. So, these surface receptors are located on the cell surface and are of four types, but we are going to focus on these three. So, this is a chemically gated ion channel, enzymatic receptors, and G protein linked receptors. So, this is how they look. This is the ligand gated channel. This is the G protein coupled receptors. These are the integrins, and this is the receptor region. Basically, this is the enzymatic receptors. So these four are the type of surface receptor. We will be focusing on to these three. So here, this ligand binding opens or closes the channel. So as soon as your ligand is binded to this particular region of the ligand gated channel, your gate will be closing or opening depending on the activity of that particular ligand. Okay. Now this is the receptor region and this is your receptor. So, ligand binding to a receptor enzyme activates an intracellular enzyme. So, what happens as soon as this particular molecule is binded to this receptor region, your enzyme, which is inside, is now activates. Okay, this basically people are joining right now. Also, please be on time. Okay. So now, what happened? Okay, so these are the things basically when they attach to this receptor region, the enzymatic activity now starts. So when you go through this G protein coupled receptor, what happens? As soon as the ligand bind to the G protein receptor, it's open an ion channel or alter enzyme activity. So this G protein activity will be altered or it opens the ion channel. Basically, this gated region will open. Integrins, when the ligand binds to the integrin receptor, it alters the cytoskeleton. What do you mean by now cytoskeleton? These are the inside the cell membrane, the skeleton of the particular cytoplasm. It is altering that. Okay, so we will be focusing on to these three surface receptors. So first of all, talking about the chemically gated ion channels. So what happens? This one ion channel receptor act as a gate when the receptor changes shape. So what happens? This particular ligand, the small molecule, when they bind to that particular ion channel, now the gate will open or it will get closed. So when a signal molecule binds as a ligand to the receptor, the specific gate allows ions such as sodium and calcium through a channel in the receptor. So as soon as your signal molecule is binded to that particular region, the gate is open and there is a cellular response which happens. So basically, these ion will pass through your cell membrane, and then after it get detached, it particular gate closes. Okay. So here what happens? First of all, this small molecule, when as soon as it will bind to that particular ion gated channel, there is a cavity which is present in the channel. It will allow your sodium and calcium uh, ions to pass through this particular cell membrane through the opening of the gate of the channel, and as soon as they are passed, it will get detached. This signal molecule will get detached, and then your gate is getting closed. So this is how your sodium and calcium will pass through your cell membranes. Okay, so this is a basically route your sodium potassium channels are activating in your body. So is it clear how the chemically gated ion channel works? How the ligand first binds, then the gate opens, and your ions will pass through. After the ions will pass through, the small molecule will then deattach from your gated channel, and then now the channel will get closed. So this is how it works. So is it clear to everyone? Okay, if it is clear, then moving towards the enzymatic receptors. So these enzymatic receptor, it is embedded in the plasma membrane. Basically, this is the cell membrane, right? So it is embedded in between the plasma membrane and with their catalytic site exposed inside the cell. So this is the catalytic site which is exposed inside the cell. So this is the cell membrane. This is the inside the cell. So this is embedded in the plasma membrane with their catalytic site exposed towards the cell. The catalytic site activated when the signal molecule joins to the receptor. So as soon as this is the signal molecule, this small molecule, as soon as it will bind to the receptor, your catalytic site is activated. These they function as protein kinases. What do you mean by protein kinases? These are the enzymes that phosphorylate your proteins. So basically, these are the enzymes which are responsible for the phosphorylation which is happening in your proteins. So what happens? First of all, this signal molecule bind to surface of the receptor. It activates it, and then the tyrosine kinase on cytoplasmic site, it will activate this particular tyrosine kinase, and then what happens? This protein is then converted into the ATP into the ADP. So basically, phosphorylation is happening of the protein inside the cell. So this is how enzymatic receptor works. So basically your small molecule signal molecule will bind to the receptor. As soon as it get binded, it will activate your enzymatic activity inside the cell, and then this enzymatic activity, as soon as it begins, it do the phosphorylation of these proteins, and then will give you the phosphorylated protein. So these are responsible for the phosphorylation in proteins. Okay, this enzymatic receptors, protein kinases. So now coming to the third. Basically, this is a pictorial representation of the receptor tyrosine kinase. So how they are phosphorylating your protein. Similarly, signal molecule will come, it will bind to that particular signal binding site, then your enzyme will get activated, and as soon as it get activated, your tyrosine kinase phosphorylate your particular protein, and it will form a phosphorylated dimer. So this is how there is a phosphorylation which is happening of the tyrosine. Okay, and as soon as the phosphorylation is done, now they will uh, the relay proteins will add and they will activate the relay protein. What do you mean by relay protein now? There is a cellular response which is happening because of this relay protein. So after the phosphorylation, the response which has to be transferred to the cell membrane, now it will do by the relay protein. Okay. So is it clear how the enzymatic receptor is working to everyone? So if it is clear, then moving forward to G protein linked receptors. So this is the third one, the G protein linked receptor. So what did it do? Signal molecule joined to a receptor. The receptor activates the G protein, and the activated G protein can then activate an ion channel or enzyme in the plasma membrane. So this G protein can activate either a ion channel or a enzyme which is present in the plasma membrane. So what happens? First of all, these G proteins are also the cell surface receptor, so it is present on the cell surface, basically embedded in the plasma membrane. So as soon as the signal molecule attached to your this G protein link receptor, this is the G protein. So this G protein will then bind towards the G protein linked receptor. So basically, from one side the signal molecule is binding, and from another side the G protein is binding. This was the unactivated G protein which was present inside the plasma membrane. As soon as it will bind towards this particular receptor, now this G protein will get activated. So after the binding of these two, it will get the activated G protein, and after the activation, it will either activate a enzyme or a ion channel. So if it is an ion channel, now this activated G protein will transfer toward this enzyme or ion channel, and it will then activate the enzyme or ion channel. Okay, so this is how it will work. So if you have this particular scenario in which there is a G protein receptor which is present on the cell surface, and inside the plasma membrane there is an inactive G protein which is present, and this is the enzyme. Okay, inactivate enzyme. So first of all, G protein will signal molecule will bind through the G protein linked receptor, and similarly the G protein will also bind to that particular receptor, and then it will activate this particular receptor. After that, this inactivated enzyme, now the G protein will get transferred to this inactivated enzyme, and it will get activated, and after the activation it will do something, that is a cellular response. Okay, so this is how it will work to pass on a particular message. So is it clear how the G protein linked receptor are working? See, I am explaining these points because we have to answer some of the questions based on these knowledge. So if you have any doubt in this particular thing, you can ask, so that there is no ambiguity in the questions which are coming in the latter slides. So is it clear to everyone? Okay, if it is clear, then moving forward. Okay. So this is it for that particular receptor thing. So what we have learned, what are receptors, what are the type of receptors, how they function with binding with the particular hormone or neurotransmitter, how they are activating the particular enzymes, particular ion channels. So this much we have learned so far. So based on that, first question is, which receptor type possesses intrinsic tyrosine kinase activity? Is it a G protein coupled receptor, ligand gated ion channel, receptor tyrosine kinase, or a nuclear receptors? So, which of these four do you think is possess intrinsic tyrosine kinase activity? So, what do you think? So, what will be the answer? Can you please speak it out, because it's very difficult for me to go every time to that particular section. Yeah. See, just speak it out, na? Okay. So the correct answer is C, as this question suggests intrinsic tyrosine kinase activity, which we have already learned in the enzymatic receptors. So what they will do, they will phosphorylate your particular protein. So these receptor tyrosine kinases have intrinsic enzymatic activity. Upon ligand binding, they dimerize and autophosphorylate tyrosine residue using ATP. This phosphorylation activates downstream signaling pathway like MAQP and PI3K-AKT. So these things you have not to go through. You don't have to go in the deep. You just have to keep in mind that these intrinsic tyrosine kinase activity, which we have learned in enzymatic activity, this basically in enzymatic receptors. So what they do, they will phosphorylate your proteins using the ATP. Okay. So coming to the next question, the insulin receptor belongs to which class of receptors? Is it GPCR, ligand gated ion channel, receptor tyrosine kinase, or cytokine receptor? So, what do you think the insulin receptor belongs to? Anyone? Please speak it out. Okay, so this the right answer is again the receptor tyrosine kinase. As I have already told you that they are responsible for the phosphorylation which is happening inside your proteins. Okay, so these the insulin receptor is a classic RTK, basically the receptor tyrosine kinase. This binding of insulin induces receptor dimerization and autophosphorylation of tyrosine residue. So, insulin receptor is responsible for that particular dimerization and autophosphorylation of tyrosine residue, triggering, triggering glucose uptake signaling pathways. So, after binding, they will trigger the glucose uptake signaling pathways. So this insulin receptor belongs to receptor tyrosine kinase receptors class. Okay. So is it clear, everyone? As they will participate in the dimerization and autophosphorylation, these are belongs to enzymatic receptor and tyrosine kinase receptors. So if it is understood, then we'll moving forward. Coming to question number 3, ligand-gated ion channels primarily function by activating the intracellular kinases, opening ion pores upon ligand binding, activating G proteins, acting as transcription factors. So, what do you think ligand gated ion channels will primarily do among these four? So, if someone knows the answer, please switch on your mic and tell me. Any guesses, anything? So, we have learned this particular thing so far. Please try to answer, at least try to make a guess. Okay, so ligand gated ion channels primarily what they will do. D. So if you know the answer, please just open the mic now. Okay. So here, what they will do, they will first open the ion pores upon ligand binding. So we have also learned through the pictorial graph that when the when your signal molecule bind to that ligand gated channel, what happens? Your gated channel will open, right? So this is how they. The right answer is B, opening of the ion pores upon ligand binding. So these receptors directly regulate ion flow across the membrane. So binding of the ligand causes conformational change and opening of the channel, right? Allowing the rapid movement of the ions, that example sodium and chlorine, right? So these ions will pass through as soon as your ligand binds with that particular ion ligand gated ion channel, and your uh, dose will get open. So as you can see here, this messenger molecule, when it bind to that particular receptor, what will happen? Now this channel will get open, and when it debound, basically they will depart from each other. What happens? The channel will get closed. Okay. So ligand-gated ion channel, as soon as you have a messenger molecule binded to the receptor molecule, your ligand-gated ion channel will open, and when the pass of the ions will happen, basically it will get close. Okay. So is it clear to everyone how they function? They function by opening the ion pores upon ligand binding. So is it clear, guys? Everything? Okay. Coming to the next question, which of the following is an example of ionotropic receptors? G protein coupled receptor, ligand gated ion channel, nuclear receptors, or tyrosine kinase receptor? So, which of the following is an example of ionotropic? ionotropic receptor. What do you mean by ionotropic receptors? It actually involves ions, right? I'm giving you a hint, it involves the ions. So, what do you think is the example for that ionotropic receptor? Any guesses? Okay, B. Right. So the right answer is B. Yeah, ligand-gated ion channel. So these ionotropic receptors are the ligand-gated ion channels that that mediate the rapid synaptic transmission. When a ligand, such as neurotransmitter, binds to the receptor, it causes a conformational change that open the ion channel, allowing the ions to flow them. Right. So these are the ionotropic receptors. So why these three are not the ionotropic receptors? So basically, GPCRs, these mediate slower second messenger based signaling. So as you have recalled, I think that G protein coupled receptor, what happens? So as soon as your messenger molecule bind with the receptor, your G protein get activated, and then this G protein will activate another enzyme or ion channel, right? So it is a slower and second messenger based signaling. Basically, you are transmitting this activated G protein to some other enzyme or ligand channel, and then it will activate that, right? So it is a slower and second messenger based signaling. Nuclear receptors are intracellular and regulate gene transcription. So this nuclear receptor, as the name suggests, it is present in the nucleus. So basically, it is present intracellular and regulates the gene expression, gene transcription, as we have talked about the steroid binding to your receptor molecule inside the cell membrane, right? And this tyrosine kinase receptor, it functions through phosphorylation cascades. Yes, we have already seen that how they are phosphorylating this particular protein molecule. That is why the ionotropic receptor example is ligand gated ion channel. So is it clear to everyone, the question and the findings behind it? Basically, these 3 points are very important, so it will allow you to understand what the other three receptors are doing. Okay. So I hope it is clear. Moving forward. So which receptor type produces the fastest psychological response? So is it nuclear receptor, physiological response? Is it nuclear receptor, RTK, GPCR, or ligand gated ion channel? So which one do you think produces the fastest physiological response? Nuclear receptor, RTK means we have gone through this particular term previously. What are RTK? RTKs are receptor tyrosine kinases. Okay. So nuclear receptor, receptor tyrosine kinases, GPCR, this is the G protein channel receptors, and ligand gated ion channel. So what do you think produces the fastest physiological response? Any guesses? C, B. Okay. So it is D, ligand gated ion channel. So what happens? This nuclear receptor, as you have seen that, what happens that first of all, the signal molecule will bind your receptor, right? It will then undergo the undergo to the nucleus, then it will bind to the gene, then it will transcript, and then it will form the mRNA to form the new protein. So this is a tedious process, right? So first of all, this plasma membrane, then you have to pass nucleus, and then the response will get recorded in the nuclear receptor. So this will take some time. RTKs, as you have to do the phosphorylation. So phosphorylation actually take time because you have to convert the ATP and the protein to ADP and phosphorylated protein. GPCRs, as I have already mentioned that this G proteins channel receptors. What happened? First of all, the signal molecule will bind to your receptor, and similarly, at the same time, simultaneously, your G protein will bind to that particular protein, and then this activated G protein will bind to enzyme and another liganted channel, right? So this also is a slower process, and also the second signaling is required. But in ligand gated channel, what happens? As soon as your messenger molecule bind to the receptor, your gate will get open, and through that the ions will get flow. So this is actually taking the least time. So this ion channel receptors act within milliseconds because they directly alter the membrane potential without involving second messengers or chain transcription. So this gene transcription is happening in the nuclear receptor. The second messenger signaling is happening in GPCRs, and also the phosphorylation requires some time. So this is how the ligand-gated ion channel responses within the milliseconds. Okay, because they directly alter the membrane potential. What do you mean by now the membrane potential? There is a gradient between the ions present inside the cell and outside the cell. So because of the gradient, because of the potential gradient, there is a very fast flow of the ions outside the cell to inside the cell. Okay, so that is why it will take only milliseconds. So it is the fastest physiological response which is happening in your cell membrane. Is it clear to everyone? Any doubts, anything? So if not, then I'm moving forward. So, a drug that binds to a receptor but produces a lower maximum response than a full agonist is called a antagonist, inverse agonist, partial agonist, or non competitive inhibitor. So, just understand the question first. They are asking a drug that binds to receptor but produces a lower maximal response than a full agonist. So first of all, you need to know what are agonist, antagonist, inverse agonist, partial agonist, right? So for that, just look at this particular picture. So here, what are the antagonists? First of all, antagonists are the protein that bind with the receptor but does not produce any effect. So basically, they will bind to the receptor, but they will not produce any response, any effect. Okay, agonists are the molecules that binds with the receptor and activates it fully. So agonists are the molecules which are desirable to bind with the receptor and activate the receptor to do the chemical change or to transmit a message. Partial agonists are the molecule that bind with receptor and activate it partially. So they are activating only to partial extent. So that is why these are the partial agonists. Inverse agonist is it binds with the receptor and inhibits its intrinsic activity. So basically, inverse, as the name suggests, agonist when it is activating your receptor fully, it is deactivating your receptor completely. So it is changing the intrinsic activity of your receptor. So these are known as inverse agonist. So these are the four type of things which we have to learn here: antagonist, agonist, partial agonist, and inverse agonist. So just go through it, go through this slide. I hope it is clear to everyone. So now coming back to the question, if it is understood. So a drug that binds to receptor. So basically, for that also we need to know this. So agonist, it activate the receptor to its maximum activity. Example, for morpholin for this receptors, it fully activated this mu receptors. Partial agonists are the compounds that activate the receptor but only partially, not to its maximum capacity. Okay, it will not activate it to maximum capacity, it is partially activating it, and it prevents the activity of full agonist. It basically prevents the activity of full agonist. Full agonist means that a agonist. agonist is equal to full agonist basically. So this agonist is maximally activating the receptor, but partial agonist is activating it partially, and it prevents the activity to the full extent. It prevents the activity of agonist and partial agonist, this particular thing. And this inverse agonist are, it prevents the constitutive activity of the receptor, that is makes the receptor inactive. So basically inverse agonist, as the name suggests, it will, what it will do, it will inactivate your receptor molecule, and the resultant effect is opposite to the constitutive activity of the receptor. Okay. And this antagonist, it prevents the activity of agonist and partial agonist. These are the antagonists. Some receptors are constitutively active, that is they have more, some baseline activity even without any ligand. Some for example benzodiazepine receptor, they have some activity when no ligand is acting on it. For such receptor, one more type of ligand can exist in inverse agonist. So you just have to pinpoint that agonist, it will show the maximum activity of receptor. Partial agonist, it will activate the receptor partially. Inverse agonist, it actually makes the receptor inactive. It disrupts the activity of that particular receptor. So now coming back to the question, now you can answer it. A drug that binds to receptor but produces a lower maximum response than a full agonist. So it is not producing the maximum response as a full agonist, but it is producing a lower maximum response. A medium response they are producing after binding the receptor. So what are they? Antagonist, inverse agonist, partial agonist, or non-competitive inhibitor? So what do you think now is the correct answer? Any one of you? If you can speak, it is very good. So the correct answer will be the partial agonist, because it is not activating your receptor fully, but it is activating it partially. So a partial agonist activates the receptor but produces less intrinsic activity compared to a full agonist, even at full receptor occupancy. In medicinal chemistry, partial agonists are useful because they reduce risk of overstimulation and toxicity. So that is why partial agonists are desirable. So now coming to the next question, which receptor family is most frequently targeted by marketed drugs? So your marketed drugs actually target some of the receptor molecules. Which are they? Nuclear receptors, GPCRs, ion channels, or receptor tyrosine kinases. So the among these four receptors, which of the family is quite targeted by the marketed drugs? So what do you think? Any guesses? I don't know if you people are aware of these things, but this is a question because no one is aware right now how the uh, marketed drugs are participating in the receptor activity. So I will answer it for you. So this is particularly the GPCRs. What do you mean by GPCRs? This is the G protein channel receptors. So approximately 30 to 40% of approved drug actually target on GPCRs because they regulate diverse physiological processes like cardiovascular, CNS, endocrine. So these GPCR receptors are actually responsible for various activities, various physiological processes happening in your body. So that is why they particular target on this particular GPCR. They are accessible. Extracellular binding pockets make them highly druggable. Because of their accessible extracellular binding pockets, they which make them very druggable. Druggable means a drug molecule can particularly easily bind to their particular extracellular binding pockets. But that is why it makes them very important in our body, the GPCR's receptor. So as you can see here, this is a G protein coupled receptor. So this is the largest family of integral membrane protein involved in many physiological and pathologies. So these are responsible for this particular GTP, it's ion channel inhibition, increased CAMP, increased DAG, basically various kinds of processes they are getting involved in. So these basically are the largest family of membrane protein that are responsible for the largest biological activities happening in our body. So 50% of all the modern drugs and 25% of the top 200 best-selling drugs are estimated to target GPCRs. Transduce the signal mediated by diverse signaling molecules such as ion, peptide, lipid, photons to induce different intracellular function, bind their ligand and to activate G protein. So basically, they introduce the signals by binding of that particular messenger molecule and the G protein, and then they will activate various channels, activate various lines present in our body. Right? So this is how they activate the various physiological processes. So that is why marketed drugs are targeting on this GPCRs. So is it clear to everyone this much, this part? So is it clear to everyone? Okay. So if it is clear, then moving forward, another question on that particular agonist point. An inverse agonist differs from an antagonist because it blocks the agonist binding, binds irreversibly, reduces constitutive receptor activity, activates second messengers. So they are asking how the inverse agonist differs from the antagonist. Is it because of the it blocks the agonist binding site? It binds irreversibly. It reduces the constitutive receptor activity or activate the second messengers. So what do you think is the correct answer among these four? Based on what we have studied on this particular agonist and antagonist thing, people are only writing in messages now. See. See, yeah. So it will reduce the constitutive receptor activity, as we have discussed that it will destroy the intrinsic activity of that particular receptor. So this inverse agonist stabilizes the inactive receptor conformation and reduces the basal signaling. This is particularly important for receptor exhibiting constitute activity. Okay, so here they will inactivate your receptor molecule activity. Coming to the next question. Which receptor type is primarily targeted by monoclonal antibody therapeutics in cancer treatment? So, what do you think is the receptor which is actually targeted by the antibody therapeutics in cancer treatment? Are these GPCRs, ligand gated ion channels, receptor tyrosine kinase, or nuclear receptor? In cancer treatment, which of the receptors are mainly targeted? It is an important question that is why I have included it here. Maybe you don't know the answer exactly, but it's better to know how the cancer treatment is happening in your body. So I will be answering for you here. It will target on this particular receptor tyrosine kinase. So this monoclonal antibodies often target extracellular domains like RTKs, blocking the dimerization and downstream proliferative signaling in cancer cells. So as you know that cancer cells are proliferative in nature. What do you mean by proliferative in nature? They are multiplying, right? They are very much multiplying with each other. That is why the cancer is growing. So to block that particular growing of that cancer cells, they block this particular RTKs and block the dimerization, as the RTKs are responsible for the dimerization and phosphorylation of the protein. So they target the RTKs to stop the dimerization, to block the dimerization and proliferation of that particular cancer cells in your body. So they pass the signal to RTKs to stop the dimerization, and that is how you can treat, you can heal with your particular cancer treatment. So that is why antibody therapeutics target these RTKs to treat the cancer. So is it clear to everyone? Okay, I hope it is clear to everyone. If not, please ask me. Whenever you feel that it is not clear, please ask me. Okay, now moving forward to next question. Allosteric modulators binds to orthosteric ligand binding site, active site of enzyme, a distinct site different from endogenous ligand site, or DNA. So what do you think allosteric modulators binds to? So to answer that, first of all, you need to know what are the allosteric enzymes, allosteric in modulators. So these allosteric enzymes are a class of regulatory enzyme regulation by the reversible non-covalent binding of regulatory molecule to the enzyme. So these regulatory molecules are called as allosteric modulators or allosteric effectors. These allosteric enzymes has additional conformation induced by binding of modulator. Conformational change induced by the allosteric modulators can produce more active or less active forms of enzyme. So this allosteric modulator bind to the enzyme other than the active site of that particular enzyme, and they can actually alter your enzymatic site either in a active way or a less active way. So there are two type of inhibition which happens after the allosteric modulation. Either it's the positive modulation, either it's the negative modulation. So what happens when your allosteric molecule binds to the enzyme other than the enzymatic active site? So they actually can alter your enzymatic shape. So when they alter your shape in such a way that the substrate is now perfectly matching with your enzyme, then it is known as the positive inhibition, positive modulation. Or if the modulator binds to your enzyme allosteric site and turns the active site in such a way that now it is not capable of binding the substrate, then it is known as negative modulation. So that is how, based on the uh, effect the allosteric enzyme is producing, it is a less or highly active enzyme which produces. So I hope in the coming slides I have that particular image. I will show you how the allosteric modulator binds. But here, allosteric modulators now bind to orthosteric ligands binding site, active site of enzyme, a distinct site different from the endogenous ligand site or DNA. So now just tell me which of these four do you think allosteric modulator binds to? D. Okay. C. Okay, C. Yeah. A site that is different from what is the endogenous ligand site. So allosteric modulator alter the receptor activity by binding to a different site. Positive modulation happens enhance the response and negative modulators reduce it. They often provide better subtype selectivity and fewer side effects. So based on that there are negative modulator and positive modulators. So now coming to the next question. Nuclear receptor ligands are typically highly polar molecule, large peptides, lipophilic small molecule, or charged quaternary amines. What do you think are nuclear receptor ligands are? See, nuclear receptors are present inside the cell membrane, right? So these are the intracellular receptors. So for them to have the intracellular receptor, so the ligands which have to be binded by that. So, what do you think is the polarity of that ligand? Is it the highly polar molecules? Is it the large peptide molecules? Is it the lipophilic small molecule or the charged quaternary amines? So, based on the environment, just you have to make sure which are the type of ligands attached to the nuclear receptors. So, what do you think is the correct answer? Okay, C. Yes, C. Lipophilic small molecules. Why? Because nuclear receptors are intracellular. These are present inside the cell, and inside the cell, as I have already mentioned, this is the lipophilic nature of the molecules. Therefore, their ligands must cross the cell membrane. So, to cross the cell membrane, steroid hormones and thyroid hormones are lipophilic molecules. So to cross the cell membrane, the ligand must be lipophilic. Lipophilic matlab they should be interacting with your lipophilic cell membrane inside the cell. Okay. So now coming to the next question, which pharmacological parameter reflects drug affinity for a receptor? So the drug affinity of receptor is actually reflected through a parameter. Is it a Emax, EC50, KD, or therapeutic index? So what do you think is a pharmacological parameter which reflects the drug affinity with a receptor? So what do you think is the correct answer? Anyone knows the answer? D. Okay. So let's see. It is the KD actually. It is the option number C. So correct answer is KD. KD, what do you mean by KD? This is the dissociation constant. So this is a dissociation constant that reflects binding affinity. Binding affinity of drug and receptor. Lower the KD value indicates stronger receptor binding. So medicinal chemists optimize affinity during lead optimization. So here how your drug is getting dissociated in the body and how it is interacting with your receptor actually depends on the dissociation constant of the drug. So Kd is the dissociation constant that reflects the binding affinity. If the value of Kd is low, then it represents that there is a stronger interaction which is happening between the drug molecule and the receptor molecule. So Kd is the equilibrium dissociation constant and it represents the affinity of drug receptor pair. So Kd is calculated as K off and K on. What do you mean by K off and K on? Kd is most often influenced by its off rate more than its on rate. Basically, the drug molecule, when it is connected to that receptor, this is the drug molecule, this is the receptor, right? So K on, the rate of the formation. Basically, when uh, it is going to bind of your receptor, then particularly this is the K on value, and K off means the rate of dissociation. So rate of dissociation means now your receptor and drug molecule has to detach from each other. So the rate at which they form a bond with each other, the drug and receptor, this is the K on, and the rate at which they get depart from each other, this is the K off. So based on K off by K on, the KD is calculated. So lower the value of KD, higher is the affinity, basically affinity of your drug and receptor to bind with each other. Okay, so this is the curve which looks like this ligand binding. So ligand binds with high affinity to receptor, similar to enzymes want to communicate specific signals to produce specific effect. So this is the KD, that is the ligand concentration, at which receptor half saturated with ligand. So you don't have to go in that deep of that particular thing, but just remember this equilibrium dissociation constant. This KD is responsible for your affinity of drug and receptor. Okay, K on and K off. So KD is calculated by K off by K on, and lower the value of KD, higher is your interaction between drug and receptor. So is it clear to everyone why KD is the parameter which reflects the drug affinity of a receptor? Any questions on this? Okay, if not, then going towards the next question. Which property is most critical when designing a CNS receptor targeted drug? High polarity, large molecular weight, ability to cross the blood brain barrier, high plasma protein binding. So, they are asking which property of the drug is very important when they design a CNS receptor targeted drug. When you have to target a drug to CNS receptor. What do you mean by CNS receptor now? These CNS drugs are the drugs which actually act on central nervous system. CNS stands for central nervous system, and the drugs which actually target on that particular thing is known as CNS drug. So the CNS consists of cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla, and the spinal cord. So these are the things which are present in your brain and the spinal cord. So, a CNS depressant. What do you mean by CNS depressant? The drug which have a depressant action on your CNS. So these are the non-selective depressant which produces a generalized depressant action on the CNS. So they are not selective. Either they will act on cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla. They are not selective. They just are generalized depressant which is given to suppress the activity of that particular CNS. Selective depressant is the it selectively depress the certain region or portion of the central nervous system. So it basically act on particular region. They include like tranquilizers, analgesic, anticonvulsants. So basically analgesics and all these tranquilizers are acting on particular region of that CNS system. So that is why they are known as selective depressants. Second one is the CNS stimulants, the drug which stimulates and reactivates CNS. So, the drug molecule which actually stimulates and reactivates the central nervous system is known as CNS stimulants. They are used for variety of purposes like treatment of depressive state, maintenance of wakefulness, restoration of respiration, and blood and restoration of normal reflexes. So, because of the restoration of these things, you use the CNS stimulants. Now, the third one is the CNS modifiers. So, they are used in treatment of mental disorders. They produces improvement in the mood and behavior of the patients. So, they are given to the patients which are whom are suffering from mental disorders. The CNS modifiers. Okay. So, these CNS drugs are the drugs which act on the central nervous system. Okay. So, now coming back to the question, which property is the most critical when designing a CNS receptor targeted drug? Is it a high polarity, large molecular weight, or ability to cross the blood brain barrier, high plasma protein binding? So, now tell me which one is the most critical thing which you have to keep in mind while designing the drug which is targeting a CNS system. Any answers? Okay, so it is the correct answer is option number C. Why? The ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. So basically, the CNS system is the central nervous system, right? It includes your brain spinal cord. So a drug has to be sufficiently lipophilic and have appropriate molecular weight and polarity to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. So the main ability is the to cross the blood-brain barrier. Okay, this is very important. So I hope it is clear to everyone what are the CNS drug and how they are designed. So next question is, strength of interaction between a drug and its receptor is best described as Emax intrinsic activity KD or therapeutic index. So what they are asking, the strength of interaction between a drug and its receptor is described by which of the following terms? It is very straightforward. Just tell me the answer because we have already discussed about that. I hope all of you have gone through that particular thing while I was explaining. So I hope every one of you have the answer with you. So what do you think is the correct answer? Yeah. So it is again the KD. See, here also they are asking about the strength of interaction. What do you mean by strength of interaction? This is again the affinity, right? Affinity between a drug and the receptor molecule. So it is actually described by the dissociation constant. We have previously learned it also that it represents the affinity of a drug molecule for its receptor. Lower KD means higher affinity, indicating stronger drug receptor binding. So that is why KD is important. This association constant is important. So is it clear to everyone why the answer is KD, the dissociation constant? Okay, so if it is clear, then I'm moving forward. So, which type of drug receptor interaction is usually responsible for reversible binding? Is it the covalent binding, ionic interaction, disulfide bond formation, or peptide bond formation? So, which type of drug receptor interaction is actually responsible for the reversible activity? So, what do you think is the correct answer? B. Yeah, ionic interaction. So these ionic interactions are responsible for the reversible nature of your drug receptor interaction, right? So most of the drug receptor interactions are non-covalent, and these type of interaction we have already studied. This ionic, hydrogen bonding, van der Waals, hydrophobic interactions. So these are the interactions which are responsible for the reversible and it nature and allow the controlled pharmacological action. Okay, so correct answer is ionic interaction. I hope it is clear to everyone. Now coming to the next question. A drug that binds covalently to receptor is most likely to act as competitive antagonist, reversible agonist, irreversible antagonist, or allosteric modulator. Now just think about it. A drug that binds covalently to the receptor is most likely to act as a competitive antagonist, reversible agonist, irreversible antagonist, or allosteric modulator. Any answers? So the drug and receptor are binding covalently with each other. Okay. So what do you think will be the correct answer? Okay, answer number C. Yeah. So it is the irreversible antagonist. So here the covalent binding actually permanently inactivates your receptor, reducing the number of functional receptors and decreasing Emax. So the covalently binded receptor with drug is actually a irreversible antagonist. Irreversible means it permanently binds with your receptor and it permanently actually inactivates your receptors. So that is why the correct option is irreversible antagonist. So is it clear to everyone? So I hope everything is clear till now. So now coming to the next question again. The maximal effect produced by a drug is known as potency, affinity, efficacy, or selectivity. So the maximum effect produced by a drug is known as its potency, its affinity, its efficacy, or its selectivity. So what do you think is the correct answer? Anyone? See. Yes, efficacy. So the correct answer is efficacy. It is the Emax that refers to the maximum biological response a drug can produce regardless of the dose. It is the efficacy of drug that is giving you the maximum biological response. Okay. Next question is a drug that binds to a receptor but produces no biological response is called agonist, partial agonist, antagonist, or inverse agonist. A drug molecule that is actually binding with your receptor, but it is not producing any biological response. It is known as. It's better not to write, just tell me. Okay, so answer is C. Yeah, it's the antagonist. Okay, antagonist binds with the receptor and block the agonist action. It doesn't produces any biological response. Now coming to another question, an allosteric modulators differ from an orthosteric ligand because it compete with the endogenous ligand, it binds at the active site, it binds at the different site and modify receptor response, or it forms a irreversible bonds. So what do you think allosteric modulator do? It will compete with endogenous ligand, it will bind at the active site, it will bind the site other than the active site and modify the receptor response, or it forms a irreversible bonds with the receptor. So what do you think is the correct answer? C. Okay, yeah. It binds at a different site and modify receptor response. So here the allosteric modulator, as I have already explained, that it binds to a enzyme. It binds to an enzyme site other than the active site, and it actually changes the conformation of the active site, either enhance the response or either reduce the response based on the conformational change. So this is how the allosteric modulators are functioning as. So basically here you can see allosteric inhibition. So basically what happens here, see, this is the active site. So this is the active site, so it will bind. And now here what will happen, this is the allosteric, it prevents the receptor mediated conformation and changes required for ATP binding. So here, this is the enzyme, this is the allosteric site in which this allosteric inhibitor is binding, and this is how they are altering the conformation of that particular enzyme. And here the ATP substrate cannot bind here. So ATP substrate is not binding because of the altering of the conformation which is happening due to the allosteric enzyme. Okay, so this is how the allosteric inhibition is taking place. Now coming to the next question, drug selectivity for receptor subtype mainly reduces the affinity, potency, side effects and bioavailability. So what they are asking, drug selectivity for a receptor mainly reduces the affinity, potency, side effects or bioavailability. If a drug is very much selective for a receptor, what do you think will get reduced? This will be the last question for the session, so just focus on it. So, what do you think will be the right answer if a drug is having a high selectivity for a receptor? C. Yeah, side effects. So, correct answer is the side effects. So, if a subtype selective drug minimizes off-target interaction and improve the therapeutic index and safety profile. So, if a drug is very much selective for a receptor, then it will actually reduces the side effects. So, the side reactions are not going to happen because now the drug is very much selective for that particular receptor subtype. So, I hope you all have understood the assignment so far. So I'm just stopping the tutorial today, and you will find the PPT. I'll share it with you guys. You will find this PPT in the folder of that weeks, and this tutorial video is also available on the YouTube channel. I will be uploading on YouTube channel this recording. I hope everything is clear till far. Everyone of you have understood whatever I have taught today. And if anything is not clear, please feel free to ask me anytime uh, during the tutorial or after the tutorial in the next tutorial if you want. So just go through the slides, just go through the video tutorial, and if anything is not clear, just tell me. Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for attending the lecture. I am just stopping the uh, tutorial today. So I hope you guys have learned something. So thank you so much for attending. Now you can all leave the lecture. Thank you so much. We'll meet on the next Saturday. And please be on time from next time onwards. Please. That's a request. So thank you so much for attending. Okay. Thank you so much.